All right. Good evening, brothers and sisters. Hopefully, this is all starting off well. I actually have the YouTube live control panel now available in OBS, and so I can see the chat without having to use my iPad. But what that means is I can't see if you are seeing what I'm seeing. So hopefully, you're getting everything. I'm going to rely entirely on the comments to let me know if there's something wrong. But we'll give people a few minutes to come in as always. I hope y'all are doing well, and we'll give it a few moments before we look at Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verses 8 to chapter 6 verse 9. Hey guys, great to have you here. Great to see you. Hurry up! Are you telling me to hurry up and get started, or what does that mean? Let's see. Yeah, thank you for noticing that. I need to speak with our tech guys. I'm not sure what happened. I was waiting for them to, usually I have to go back and crop our service so that it just has the sermon up, but I see it's still going, and I leave that to our tech guys. I need to talk with them about that. I'm not sure why they must have left it running or something. So anyways, you can get a dark view of our sanctuary right now since Sunday, but thank you, Pickles. I love you guys. Y'all are great. Gift, as always, to be with you all. I look forward to this. I can't stay up late. I don't know about y'all, but I had one member in our church who was like, how do you stay up late and do that, referring to these? And I was telling him, man, I'm the same way. I'm not a night person. My best working hours are like 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., and usually it's all downhill from there. But it's been a joy to stay up a little later with you guys. Stephen, good to have you as well. God bless you all. Look forward to jumping in. Your job is a vanity, so I'm listening to this instead of working. Considering the book that we are in, I cannot disagree with you. All of life is vanity. All of life. You're the opposite. Yeah, we've got some people in our congregation who are very similar. They can stay up late. They sleep in late. I can't do it. It's not me. Hey, Natalie, good to have you with us. Steve, Bobby, Pickles. Is it Lucino? Am I saying that right? Brian, good to see you, Brian. I always hesitate to say people's usernames because I often don't know if I'm even pronouncing things right. You guys, these are mostly pretty simple. So, but sometimes people come in and I just don't know what to say. So, not trying to be mean. I acknowledge you. Glad you're here with us. Here till 11. Yeah, I can't imagine we would go that long. I try to keep it to an hour because like I said, I got to go to bed early and I wake up early. Never sleep in. Honestly, I'm productive at 4 a.m. or I'm up at 4 a.m. but not productive. Good to see you, Brian. Yeah, Bobby. So I feel like I'm the opposite. Like my most productive hours are right when I wake up. That was when Lauren, my wife, and I, when we got married. We found out real fast that we are very different. So, I wake up and we've got all these gifts from the wedding reception, and I'm ready to assemble things. Like we got a lamp, and I was like, let's put this together, I'm waking up, and she's like, what are you doing? And suddenly we realize how different our personalities are. She's much slower to getting up, and I've always just woken up right away, and I'm at full blast. And then by right before noon, I'm usually downhill, which I can't do much after lunch. So. It's way smarter going to bed early and being productive in the morning, but I'm just motivated at night. I have heard people say that. I don't know. I think everyone's wired differently. I know the president of the seminary that I went to, Al Mohler. So he does his most productive work between 2 to 4 a.m. He's always up. I've got some friends who were some of his assistants, and they'd get emails from him in the middle of the night because he's always got this podcast going, The Briefing, and you'll notice it's always out really early because he was usually reading the articles, preparing and recording in the middle of the night so that it's up first thing. So he's super productive through the night. It's probably not as healthy, but some people are great, much more productive that way. Yeah, it doesn't like your 4:30 alarm. Nighthawks here in the Great White North. Yeah, most productive when I have 800 milligrams of caffeine. Yeah, so I've always been a huge, whether it's Coca-Cola or coffee, a caffeine drinker. But this last year, I've noticed if I have any caffeine in my system, I can't sleep well. So now I drink coffee once a week, and man, it's like it feels really, really good that day. Absolutely love it. But the rest of the days are all normal. I'm just dreaming about coffee until Friday when I get a lot of coffee. But man, that Friday is when I do my long runs, and so I get some electrolytes. I eat like a turkey, not a turkey. I just dip a quesadilla essentially, or a tortilla wrap in peanut butter, just to get something on my stomach, or a banana if we have one dipped in peanut butter. And then I just drink a bunch of caffeine, a bunch of coffee, and it just feels great. So actually can enjoy my run that way. Early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. What's up, Legit? Good to have you with us this evening. Hopefully healthy, maybe wise. I don't know about wealthy. I missed that part. Yeah, coffee. That's a great question. It's the black container, the electrolytes that I use. It's like a black tub, and I don't ever pay attention to brands, unfortunately. My wife does. She's the one who orders them. But like a black container with like a spectrum of colors across it. They're fairly common. I don't know the brand, to be honest, though. We tried the Element ones, but the salt content was so high that it was bad news if you drank that before a run. Yeah, Benjamin Franklin. Very much that way. When I was heavy in the health training world, I joined a 24-hour gym. Go there like 3. So yeah. That's a great way to utilize those 24-hour gyms for sure. But yeah, it's good stuff. Ecolite. I've heard of that. I'm not sure. Hey there, Gail. Good to have you with us. I've not heard of Ecolite. Well, maybe I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar. I don't think we've tried it. We've settled on the, hey, Rhonda, good to have you with us. So, question about 726. What's the context behind it? It was sent to a friend of mine. Well, so I can pull it up and give it a shot. It's, let's see. Whoops. I haven't looked much at it, but let me look. So, question about Ecclesiastes 7, verse 26. Let's see. And I find something more bitter than death. Actually, let me make sure this is on there. And I find something more bitter than death, the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and whose hands are fetters. He who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. So in terms of my understanding of what that is, let me try to make sure this is up. Or I'm trying to watch the chat, and now I'm realizing... All right, here we go. So, okay, cool. That's how we do this. Great. Yeah, so Ecclesiastes 7, verse 26, Legit is asking about, so what exactly were they saying? Were they saying anything in particular about how to interpret it? My understanding of what's happening here in verse 26, as far as Solomon says, I find something more bitter. That keyword there is bitter. Let's see if it references it. Yeah. So Proverbs 5 references, there's a cross-reference here, because this is where I was going to go. But I think what Solomon's referring to is what we call lady folly. The lips of a forbidden woman drip honey. Her speech is smoother than oil, but in the end, she's as bitter as wormwood. And it'll probably bring up Proverbs 9. Nope, it's not going to bring up Proverbs 9. But we meet lady folly most explicitly in the wisdom literature, of which Ecclesiastes is a part. But I was thinking of, come on. All right, my setup's not quite. Come on. Okay, there we go. Proverbs 9, where you meet Lady Folly, right? The woman of folly is loud, she's seductive, knows nothing, goes on and on. So where I was going to go with that, and I was curious if that's where it linked us to, is I sent to a friend of mine. The person didn't give context as to why they sent it to my friend. So I think what's happening there is Proverbs personifies two women. There's Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly. They're not actual women. It's a metaphor for the way of life. You're either on the path of wisdom, following the Lord, or you're on the path of folly. You're chasing sin, covenant, unfaithfulness. So when we get to chapter 7 next week, I think it'll be next week, we'll see Solomon here is on the same path. And what he's saying is he sets out to choose the path of wisdom, but what he finds is he finds sin, something more bitter than death, Lady Folly, the woman whose heart is snares and nets, whose hands are fetters. I think that's all personification for sin. He who pleases God escapes her. The one who walks wisely, the sinner is taken by her. And so what he's referring to there is his life was caught up with, he chased Lady Folly. He gave himself to sin and lust is what I think it's about. However, what they meant by it, I have no idea. So hopefully that's helpful. If not, ask some follow-up questions. But let me pray for us, and we will start Ecclesiastes 5, verse 8. And really, I'll probably start with a couple quotes to get us rolling. But good to be here with you guys. Let me pray, and we'll get rolling. God, we give you thanks for this evening. Thank you for these brothers and sisters. I thank you for any unbelievers who are with us. We pray that your word would be made clear and that it would prick our consciences, that we would be compelled to despair of our own righteousness and to find Jesus, our perfect Savior and King, willing, as always, the one who has interceded for us, the one who has propitiated your wrath. Help us to treasure him and his wisdom, and that all might be filled with hope by repenting of our self-reliance and sins and casting ourselves deeply and entirely on Christ, wisdom from you. We thank you in his name. Amen. Yeah, that's great. Well, if there's any follow-up questions on that, let me know. As always, you guys know my disclaimer. Hold on, I gotta take advantage of being able to do this. See that transition right from this screen. I'm just enjoying having. Sorry, that was my wife's. She's doing journaling videos, and that was a shot of that there. But just enjoying the transitions here. Okay. Anyways, so tonight we are in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, and we are switching to the topic of wealth, which is really where you'll see. I mean, you can even see it. Right here, if you see in the Proverbs the oppression of the poor, this section is going to trace the themes of riches and poverty. So we're going to be there this evening. But before we do that, let me remind you, as always, I am not your pastor. I am a pastor to a local church. I am just a brother to those of you who believe in Christ, and I pray and hope that through this time, God's word would be put further forth into the public sphere of ideas. If there's any unbelievers among us, I pray the word would convict them, draw them to the Lord. If there are any believers with us, my hope is that God's truth would give you more light and you would love Christ all the more. But most importantly, I don't want to replace your participation in a local church. So give yourself to a local church. May this only supplement some of the ministry and teaching that you receive. But I cannot be your pastor. I'm a pastor to the brothers and sisters that meet with me every Sunday. Nevertheless, I'm grateful for you, and I do pray that this would help God's word go forth in our lives. Anyways, our topic tonight, I might ask it this way. How are you warmed? Heat. And I'm making that question from a quote by Jeremiah Burroughs. If you've not read this book, I would definitely recommend it. Not my book, but the book that I'm quoting here. Jeremiah Burroughs wrote a book called The Rare Jewel of Christian Contentment. It's an excellent, excellent book that I highly recommend you read. It's in the public domain, which means you could read it for free, like electronically. But there are some good, probably updated translations, abridged versions of it. However, when I ask that question, are you warmed? I'm referring to this illustration he begins with. He says, a man who is healthy in body puts on his clothes, and perhaps at first on a cold morning they feel cold. But after he has had them on a little while, they are warm. Now, how did they get warm? They were not near the fire. No, I'm sorry. I guess I should have asked that. They were not near the fire. No, this came from the natural heat of his body. Now, when a sickly man, the natural heat of whose body has deteriorated, puts on his clothes, they do not get hot after a long time. He must warm them by the fire. And even then, they will soon be cold again. So he's making an observation. The state of a person's body determines how it is warmed. A healthy body tends to warm the clothes that it puts on. An unhealthy body, when you have a fever, for example, no matter how much clothes you put on, you're still chilled, and you must seek out something like a fire, for example. Burroughs, however, is not speaking of sickness of body. He's speaking of sickness of the soul. Humanity is on a constant quest to keep our souls warm. And so here's how he concludes it. The warmth of the fire, that is a contentment that results merely from external things, will not last long. But that which comes from the gracious temper of one's spirit will last. When it comes from the spirit of a man or woman, that is true contentment. So what Burroughs is aiming at is true godliness is the person who is filled within. All right, my sons are here with me tonight. Can I help you, buddy? Yeah, you can go ask Asher to take it off for you, okay? Can you go ask Asher to help you? Yes, he can. Go ask him. Thanks, bud. All right. So that was my 3-year-old. But so back to where I was. Okay, so Burroughs is talking about there are 2 ways a human soul can be warmed. It can be warmed from within, which is the contentment of knowing our Creator. But most of us, our souls are sick. And it's indicated by the constant need to acquire, to purchase, to change our situation, whatever it is, moving. It's the grass is greener on the other side perspective that causes us to constantly seek warmth through external means. And many of us fail to recognize that the reason we're chasing one thing after another is because internally something has gone wrong. We're empty, we're cold, and we're trying to find something to supply a permanent warmth. I know for me, I remember I noticed this especially. I'd made a video at one point sharing this, but when I was in college, I went through a phase where I was just buying one thing after another. I remember I bought like a new truck, and I didn't like that, so I didn't keep it very long. I sold it, bought like a 2005 convertible Mustang. And then I bought a Mark Hoppus precision bass with a jazz body. And then I bought this Ampeg 810. Like, I was just buying one thing after another because I was trying to warm myself, fill myself externally. And that's what Burroughs is getting at. That's what we do as creatures. When we are not content from within, we turn without to look outside and to acquire. And we promise ourselves something will satisfy. How is it I'm deconstructing atheism? It's not a worldview that it can be deconstructed. Hey, I appreciate your question. So I find that most atheists in our contexts are loaded with what we might call logical positivism. And that's what drives their secularism. They are driven by a verificationist criteria. And so the preacher works through the book of Ecclesiastes, looking at what he can see and observe, and he slowly begins to dismantle it. And so what we're doing is we're working topically through these different spheres of life in which he's deconstructing a secular approach. And so that would be an example. Do this with food. Yeah, it can be food, it can be whatever it is. It's some sort of functional God, of which Paul speaks of created things, right? We have turned from worshiping the Creator to worship the creature. But what's the connection to atheism this evening? Well, I'm really aiming at Sam Harris this evening, his book, The Moral Landscape. And the connection is somewhat, well, I'll just read it. Sam Harris of The New Atheist writes about happiness in his bestseller, The Moral Landscape. If our well-being depends upon, I'm trying to highlight, and this is not, okay, there we go. If our well-being depends upon the interaction between events in our brains and events in the world, and there are better and worse ways to secure it, then some cultures will tend to produce lives that are more worth living than others. Okay, so this is the segue into secularism I'm aiming at this evening. And this is not my view, this is Sam Harris's view. He says our well-being, he's assuming or asserting, you might say, our well-being depends upon the interaction between events in our brains and events in the world. And since there are better and worse ways to secure such happiness, then some cultures will tend to produce lives, and listen to this language, that are more worth living than others. Nathan, I appreciate your objection. Atheism is just the lack of belief in a God. That might be how it's used contextually. Historically, it's not, right? We know that Christians were actually considered atheists first. And so the conclusion that there is no God, that you don't have a reason to believe in a God, actually stems from a set of presuppositions that's coming from your framework by which you acknowledge the world around you. To be able to say you have no reason to believe in God is to assert some form of knowing things. And so the atheist isn't neutral. I understand the desire to be neutral, to kind of get away from being responsible for what one believes, but the atheist is far from neutral. I think the atheist wants to reduce himself to, I just don't believe in God. What they mean by that is, I have a framework, an epistemology, if you will, for how I can know things, in which you're assuming things about history, you're assuming things about truth, you're assuming things about moral values and propositions and logic and all these things. So it's actually a really loaded statement, but yeah, you don't have to agree with that. It's just, we're not going to take it for just simply a lack of a belief in God, because that's simply not how it's applied. But let's see, so Harris is asserting, and what I think is really fascinating about his statement here, is that some cultures will tend to produce lives more worth living. Isn't that an incredible statement? If we can get the events in our brains and the events in the world to interact properly, you can create lives that are more worth living. Given secularism, given atheism, I find that really fascinating. So my summary of him is, Harris contends that by the powers of empiricism, we can measure happiness and accomplish it by lining up the right set of interactions between the events in our brain and the events in our world. You can keep warm, to refer to Burroughs, by the right getting and experiencing. But the question is, does that conclusion hold? Right? I mean, given Pinker's book, given Harris's book, what they would contend is a certain level of wealth and hospitality, a certain level of material success, if you will be enough to satisfy. It will create what Harris calls a life that is more worth living. But that's where, again, as always, the preacher is more willing to be skeptical than I think today's skeptic. And he's going to say, actually, you can have all that wealth and produce lives that are not as worth living. Or at least we would say they're not satisfying. And that's really what the preacher's aiming at this evening. I want to show you the, let's see, the theme here. You can see it in the text itself. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to pull this up for you. Come on. Trying to get it so that I can see both the... Let's see. There we go. I think that works. You would disagree. It seems like what I'm trying to say is that atheism is a knowledge claim. Yes. It definitely is a knowledge claim. Because when somebody says it's just a lack of belief in a God, that in itself is constructed from a particular framework. I love the analogy given by Greg Bahnsen, so forgive me, guys, if y'all have heard this before. But Bahnsen talks about, let's say you buy an apple orchard, and you want to sell apples, take them to the market. So you take all your apples off the trees, you go to the market, try to sell them. Well, no one's going to buy them because you didn't separate between good and bad apples. So what do? You come home with all your apples, and you'd say, I need to create a machine that will separate between good and bad apples. Well, you can't do that unless you first have a criteria for distinguishing between good and bad apples. And it's the same for conclusions about the universe. So, for example, any statement about the existence or non-existence of God is assuming some sort of criteria for evaluating such a question. To make any statement at all, atheism is just the lack of a belief in a God, comes with all sorts of metaphysical assumptions and framework for reasoning. And so I understand that because we are post-Enlightenment, objectivism has been around in the late early 1900s, people are still failing to see that. But even secular philosophy departments have long moved beyond this sort of objectivism, that there's such things as a brute fact or even just a neutral atheist. But again, I don't expect you to take my word for it. It's just I'm not going to believe you when you say, well, atheism is just a lack of belief in a God. So, but back to Harris, and Harris is saying, hey, the right set of possessions, the right set of comforts could create a life worth living. And what the preacher's going to get at this evening is say, actually, when we look at the wealthy, when we look at those who have it all, there's a problem. And you'll see the theme repeated here. Verse 10, he who loves money will not be satisfied. This word is repeated 4 times in our passage tonight. It's the ESV translates it full here, but it's the same word. The satisfied stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. He jumped down here to 6 verse 3. His soul is not satisfied with life's good things. All the way down to verse 7. All the toil of a man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. And so what the preacher is looking at this evening is he's looking at the wealthy and he's going, hey, like if material possessions really, really work, if the quality of life leads to a fulfilling and more worthy life worth living, if you will, the preacher's going that the data says otherwise. Like if we look at people, we look at the rich. I quoted Jim Carrey several weeks ago, right? When he said, I wish everyone had the chance to get rich and have everything that they ever wanted so that they could find out it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be or that it wasn't satisfying. So the preacher's turning and he's looking at wealth this evening. What assumptions do I say atheists hold to? Well, it's going to depend on the atheist, right? Atheism isn't monolithic. Really, every atheist you run into is going to try to navigate this discussion in different ways. But I'd say 99% of atheists in the West are going to be some form of positivists. They think that, like Christopher Hitchens, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. What they don't realize is that's not an evidential claim. That claim itself can't pass its own criteria. It's a philosophical assertion that can't even pass its own measure. And so most atheists, I find, think that they are consistent positivists who only believe in what they can verify empirically. But the problem is the very foundation of their assumptions is not empirical, it's philosophical. But again, that's going to depend on the atheist that you're talking to. So, but as the preacher says here, we're tracing this lack of satisfaction through the rich this evening. So I'm going to divide it up in, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to give you 5 sections to start us this evening. We're going to look at first at 8 to 9. This is verses 8 to 9, where the preacher begins this discussion. He says, if you see in a province the opposition of the poor and the violation of justice and righteousness, do not be amazed at the matter, for the high official is watched by a higher, and there are yet higher ones over them. But this is gain for a land in every way, a king committed to cultivated fields. So the preacher is I think, addressing the question, should we join the rich or overthrow them? Should we join the rich or overthrow them? And the reason I say that is because here he is observing often the case, the poor receive injustice and don't get righteousness. And he says, if you observe that, don't be amazed at the matter, right? Remember, the preacher is looking at Genesis 1 to 8. So he has not only a sense of the order that God has created, but also how it has fallen. Christians of all people should not be shocked when sinners act like sinners. And so the preacher says, don't be surprised when the rich violate justice and righteousness and do not give it to the poor. If you know anything about mankind, if you have this is where I think secularist anthropology, their doctrine of man, is incredibly naive, because they tend to assume that man is basically good. And here, the preacher is looking at Genesis 3, 4, and on, and he knows it's very normal that people, that governments are unjust, and that people do wickedness, and that the poor get mistreated. And he says, don't be shocked by that. Because at the heart, the question is, do we overthrow the rich or do we join them? He says, don't be amazed that this happens because, and this almost sounds comforting, the high official is watched by a higher, right? You might think that he's saying, hey, don't be amazed because God will answer this miscarriage of justice, right? But I don't think that's what he's saying here. I think he says that elsewhere. But here his point is that the high official is, I think he's saying, watched out for by someone else. And there are yet higher ones over them. In other words, don't be surprised when the whole coalition of the wealthy are just patting each other on the back and taking care of each other, and like they're not really looking out for the little guy. Don't be amazed by that. Part of the reason I think that is he sees this as a negative statement when he asks, or when he adds the conjunction here, but, because he realizes all of this is a negative statement. The poor are often victims of miscarriages of justice. Don't be shocked, because those in power, the wealthy, tend to look out for one another. But there is something practical here. There is gain for land in every way. A king committed to cultivated fields. The point that he's making there is even the wealthy still benefit from an ordered society. Does that make sense? Don't overthrow. Don't overthrow the order. It is the general nature of things in light of the fall that miscarriages of justice happen, because those in power, the rich and powerful, tend to look out for one another. However, there is still something beneficial. Now, again, he's not saying, therefore, that we should be satisfied that this is the way things are. He's just saying this is the way it often works out for the rich. But what we're going to see is the rich are just as miserable. Let me pause for a minute. I don't have any good reason to believe with any certainty that a God exists. Yeah, I mean, I understand you think that. I don't think you have a good reason to believe any of this exists if you're going to be consistent. And so, for example, prove empirically that you were not created 5 minutes ago with your memory intact. Like, you can't do that. I think your empirical criteria is impossible for you to be consistent with. And so I think it's more of a guard to avoid being consistent in your thinking. Prove empirically that other minds exist. Prove that laws of logic exist. Prove that your senses gather true and meaningful data outside of yourself. Like, you have no reason to believe in any of those things if you're going to be a verificationist. Now that we Christians have eyes to see, we forget when we didn't have eyes to see. So we're shocked. Yeah, I think it's often the case that people are... I'm always shocked by Christians who, the Epstein thing. Now, we should grieve that list. We should grieve everything about that. But when Christians act shocked by it, I'm like, man, have you read your Bible? Like, I'm not surprised. I grieve, and I think I want our government, and I want us to hold them accountable. And even though we won't do so perfectly, we should do everything we can to. But we, of all people, know the human heart. Shouldn't surprise us when the high officials are watching out for one another. But that's okay, because the wealthy are not as satisfied as they appear. So we have here, I call verses 8 to 10 the mob, but really we move from the mob to the moochers in verses 10 to 12. 10 to 12, the preacher goes on. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is also vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the labor or the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much. But the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. So there's he makes the observation then that those in power, the rich, actually come with all sorts of problems that keep them just as miserable. Number one, the person who loves money will never be satisfied with it. Those who get all the money that they thought would finally satisfy never have enough. J.D. Rockefeller. You guys know Rockefeller, historic millionaire. I think in today's money, he's a billionaire. But Rockefeller said, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, right here. Rockefeller was once asked, how much money is enough? His response, just a little bit more. His net worth today, in today's world, would have been $360 billion. $360 billion. And when asked if he'd had enough, or how much money would be enough, he said, just one more. Just another dollar. It's those who get wealth are not satisfied with it. The second thing that the preacher points out here is that when goods increase, they increase who eat them. In other words, when somebody, I'm trying to think, I think I saw a quote from Chris Tucker the other day, or some story about him. He was the actor with Jackie Chan in Rush Hour. And I guess when he had made it big and started making a lot of money, several of his family members quit their jobs. And he said something along the lines to them that, I'm rich, you guys need to go to work. The point being, when you begin to make more money, one of the miseries that comes is people begin to mooch off of you. And of course, you see how shallow those relationships really are. But whether it's your family coming and mooching off of the money, your friends, or even the government, the point is, with an increase in the money that you make comes a proportionate amount of spending and giving and sharing or whatever, such that it doesn't make a difference. Hey there, good to have you with us. The picture that comes to mind to me is Kramer from Seinfeld. If you remember, Kramer is always just busting through Jerry's door and taking his food and all those things. That's the point he's making here. The person who makes, whose goods increase, they increase who eat them, who consume them. Yeah, you find out who your real friends are. You find out who your real friends are when you get rich. But here, you know what? He wants to be real for a moment. Says there is an advantage, right? You want to know the advantage of being rich? Here it is. He says, what advantage has their owner, the one whose riches go up, but to see them with his eyes? It's sarcasm, right? Sure, like you don't have billions of dollars like J.D. Rockefeller. What's the difference between J.D. Rockefeller and you? It's not satisfaction. He just has the ability to look at more money than you. That's the sole difference. Like if you're promising yourself right now, if I could make another 20 grand, another 100 grand by the end of the year than I did last year, life would be so much better. The point he's making is no, it wouldn't. More goods, more money does not correspond to greater fulfillment. The only difference between those who have more and those who have less is that those who have more get to look at more, but it doesn't make them any more satisfied. That's his point. And he points out an irony. Keep your friends rich and your enemies rich and wait to find out which is which. And it rhymes. That makes it even better. But he points out an irony here too. Let me try to... I got to work on my setup here because I'm like clicking things I don't mean to tonight. Here's the irony. Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much. But the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. The point that he's making is often the person who gets better sleep at night, not the one who's got full bank accounts, is the person who works hard, just a faithful worker in the daily grind. Whether they've eaten a lot or a little doesn't often make the difference. Honest work goes a long way. Obviously, that's not a hard and fast rule, but generally, the person whose stomach is full, the one who's filled with riches, is often anxious because they're not satisfied. Whereas often you meet those who are diligent laborers, week in and week out, who sleep well. The Chris Tucker thing. Sorry to throw y'all off. My movie reference, I've told my congregation I think in movie categories, so usually whenever I'm reading or teaching, I'm always thinking of movies that I've seen. I've just seen too many movies, at least I had when I was younger. So he moves from the mob to the moochers. The mob may often look like they've got themselves covered and controlled, but in reality, they have to deal with mooching and their misery. And it gets even worse for them because of how insecure their riches really are, right? 13 to 17, we look now at the insecurity of riches. There is a grievous evil that I've seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt, and those riches were lost in a bad venture. He's a father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil, that he may carry away in his hand. This also is a grievous evil. Just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation and sickness and anger. Was Jesus an economic... did Jesus have an approach to the economy that did not exist at his time? What do you think? Less could be more. I think the focus is less... I think the focus of Solomon would be less about how much and more about what we do and how we relate to what we have. I don't think Solomon is commending poverty and condemning wealth, but I do think he's trying to sober our perspective, right? Our tendency is to think of those things in a vacuum, that poverty is inherently bad and abundance is inherently good. But because of the curse, you can find those with little who know their Creator totally satisfied. And you can find those with much who do not know their Creator miserable. So I don't think his focus is commending inherently less, but I think he wants us to be disenchanted with the abundance of what our hands can build, if that makes sense. Is the Bible study part of the deconstructing, or is it just a Bible study? Well, I think so. If you went back to the beginning, 7 or 8 videos ago now, Solomon he's walked through a secular life, this under the sun perspective, where he has attempted to approach life from a humanistic, what we would call kind of a proto-rationalism that would have been circulating from some of the encounters that Israel had with early Greeks. And so I think Ezra included Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament canon to engage some of this early secularism, which was built upon self-referencing epistemologies. I observe very empirical. This is why you see the language throughout the book that he's just going from hypothesis to hypothesis, running experiment after experiment. And so it's titled Deconstructing Atheism because I think what Solomon is doing is he's deconstructing the same presuppositions that we find in contemporary atheism. And so what we're doing is we're walking through the book, and he's engaging a variety of topics, and therefore we're treating them in the arrangement that he has. So to those asking, yeah, this you're not seeing him engage atheism directly. However, I do think he's engaging a lot of the conclusions or assumptions, the outworkings of a worldview built by secularism. Christianity does not get you a mansion. Becoming a prosperity teacher does. And that is a far cry from Christianity. So we've looked at the mob. We've looked at the moochers. We're now looking at the insecurity of wealth. Starting at verse 13 again. There's a grievous evil that I've seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owners to his hurt. I think I've already read this, but I'll read it again. Those riches were lost in a bad venture, and he is the father of a son, but has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil, that he may carry away in his hand. So also is a grievous evil, just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness and vexation and sickness and anger. So to the secularists who seem to have joined us, this is basically an engagement with Sam Harris's proposition that we can get the right arrangement of events in our brain and events in this physical world, then we can create lives that are more worth living. And what the preacher is saying is, well, there's a problem. What I see when I look around is you get people wealth, and often they are lost in a bad venture. That getting that lifestyle actually did more harm than good. So there was a story at the time when I was working through this. I can't remember his name. Story of Sam Bankman-Fried. 2022, he had announced that his crypto trading company FTX was being bought out, and in one night he lost $14.2 billion, earning him the award for the biggest fall in fortune ever recorded. The owner of a $15 billion a year ago, this would have been a couple years ago. Today he sits in jail in a tragic reversal of fortunes. Now that, of course, is not everybody's story. However, this often is the case, that people who get wealthy, who acquire all that the world offers, lose it suddenly. Again, those of you who were with me several weeks ago, we looked at the OceanGate, tragedy with several millionaires losing their fortune by their death. But in this case, the evil here is this man acquires all these things. They're lost in a bad venture. He has nothing to leave his son. The other problem, as it goes on, is recognizing, and this is what we often forget, when we live for the 80 years under the sun here, we think that we can build a better world, but it turns out everything that we build gets lost in the end anyway, right? Verse 15, as he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came. Shall take nothing for his toil, that he may carry away in his hand. I've heard it this way: there's no U-Hauls, no U-Hauls in heaven, and it's the same here. Whatever man acquires, whatever positive worth, like Harris suggests, that you can add to the world, none of it lasts. It's meaningless. You'll take none of it with you. What of the religious rich? People who are Christians and wealthy, are they suddenly good people? I mean, a person's wealth or a person's goodness isn't measured by how little or how much they have in their bank account. Bruce, I think you just jumped in here, and I'd encourage you can go back you can probably go back 40 minutes And we made those connections. Evil is me trying to justify teaching of a 2,000-year-old book. So this is what I love Lewis's comment. This is what we call chronological snobbery. What's evil about a perspective 2,000 years old? Atheism has been around for at least 2,000 years old. Materialism has been around for more than 2,000 years. We have Thales and Anaximenes, I think. They were both materialists who argued that the world was, or the universe was base. One of them was air, the other one was water. So if it's evil for me to be justifying teaching of a 2,000-year-old book, if you're an atheist or a materialist, a naturalist, your views are just as old. So I'm not sure what point you're making. You don't see the issue with realizing that what you do doesn't last. Well, in one sense, there's nothing wrong with it. In another sense, it's a web of beliefs that we're talking through. So I think you assume that I'm just dealing with one issue, and because this one issue, therefore atheism is wrong or something like that. But we've been dealing with a whole web of issues. It's not. I don't want to oversimplify it to just one particular topic. So. I present the situation of secularism and wealth versus religious people who are poor. I explicitly stated it's not about the amount of money. I made that comment a few times now. Iron Age morals versus Age of Enlightenment. That's incredibly ironic. You think that today's values are superior to those of antiquity. Have you been out of the West at all? A lot of the non-Western countries look upon the morality in the West, and they would absolutely condemn the Age of Enlightenment. You can only make that comment because I don't think you're familiar with the moral systems outside of the West. But even in that one topic, what's the issue with realizing nothing lasts? There's nothing wrong with realizing nothing lasts unless, as what we're dealing with here, Sam Harris's comment, that we can create a life more worth living. If nothing lasts, then you're not creating something worth more. That's just it. It becomes it becomes a myth, a self deception. If a religious person is rich, especially because of their exploitation of the proletariat, does that religious belief make them good? Certainly not. 1 Timothy chapter 6 condemns those who would use Christianity to get rich. That would certainly not make them good. In fact, the Lord would doubly condemn them. If this is what 1 John talks about. How can somebody who has the world's goods see their brother or sister in need and not care for them? How can the love of God remain in them? All right. I'm going to move on because you guys don't seem to have anything to add other than just kind of regurgitating your positions. But you're welcome to stay. Glad you're here. I appreciate your dialogue. But we're going to keep moving. We're going to keep moving on here. Let's see. So we looked at the insecurity of wealth. Actually, let me compare this to. I wanted to go to Christ's teachings for a moment. Matthew. Sorry, I cannot type because my setup has my keyboards half covered, and I think I must be pushing buttons at the same time. There we go. Matthew 6. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. And the point that he's getting at there is, you know, in the old days, you could gaze. You still today, when something's wrong with a person, you often just see it in their eyes. Not a hard and fast rule, but it's often the case. And so the direction of one's eyes often determines one's whole body, right? So if you are somebody who is covetous, envious, craving, going after, it's indicated by your wandering eyes, always envying, and it's incompatible with the knowledge of your Creator. And so I think largely what drives a lot of secularism is a love of stuff, a trust in the things that human hands make, the belief that we can construct an Eden apart from God. And so at its root, it's not merely, it's simply a desire to build a better world. It's what James calls adultery. It's adultery with against our Creator. And thus, as Christ teaches us, you cannot serve God and stuff. Like if your heart is built upon the security that man offers, you're always going to look for ways to rationalize the non-existence of God. We looked at the mob, we looked at the moochers, we looked at the insecurity of riches. We're going to jump to chapter 6. I'm going to come back in terms of the structure of Ecclesiastes here. If you were here at the beginning, you probably saw where I had mentioned the 4 uses of the word satisfied. You had it in 5 verse 10. You had it again in 5 verse 12. The Hebrew there is the same word for satisfied. Then you have it 2 more times in 6 verse 3 and then 6 verse 7. But they sandwich, for those of you who've been here for a while, if you'll remember, there's 2 views throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. There's his life of secularism, which is constantly what he's working through at the beginning, kind of tearing it down. And then what emerges is his directing us towards theism. And so what you have in verses 18 to 20, we're not going to look there yet. I'm going to come back to it in a moment. But this is where he is commending to us the alternative. So he's deconstructing this approach with wealth here in chapter 5 and in chapter 6, sandwiching the positive perspective here, which we'll get to in just a moment. Let's see. Apparently I can put users in timeout. Let's see. Let's see what that's like. All right, y'all just tell me who needs to be put in timeout, and apparently I can do that now. Sorry, I'm just catching up on comments. Should we not make the world better? Yes, we should. We shouldn't do so in ways that are false. We shouldn't try to construct false definitions of better. Let's see. Sure, you can say it's silencing dissenters. I was engaging with you all, but some of you are have been really rude to others, and so I will happily put people in timeout if they're going to be harsh and if they're going to dominate the chat in a way that's unhelpful. All right. All right, back to it. Chapter 6. So we have in chapter 6, again, the emptiness of human wealth. And so, again, how this corresponds to this topic is, as Harris has mentioned, if you can create the right events in a person's brain and in the material world and line those up, you can create a life more worth living. But that's, again, what the preacher's looking at. And so that's what we're going to look at, chapter 6, verses 1 to 6 here. Is that really the case? Can you really do that? There's an evil that I've seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires. Yet God does not give him power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity, it's a grievous evil. If a man fathers 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good things. And he also has no burial. I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For it comes in vanity and goes in darkness, and in darkness its name is covered. Moreover, it has not seen the sun or known anything, yet it finds rest rather than he. Even though he should live 1,000 years twice over, yet enjoy no good, do not all go to the one place. So where he's going with this, and this is, again, what I think Harris, I think this is what Steven Pinker and others fail to recognize, is that you can create you can create more wealthy societies, but that's not synonymous with more fulfilling or even lives more worth living. And that's really where he's going here. Here's a man, for example, who has wealth, possessions, honor. He lacks nothing of all that he desires, all that man can create. Yet, God actually demonstrates through this man how unsatisfying they are, because he doesn't give them the power to enjoy them. He goes on, if a man fathers 100 children and lives many years, so, what's wealth in the ancient days? Multitude of offspring to carry on, and many years. He had all that, so that his years were many. But all his days he was not satisfied with all that he had, such that he had no burial. And the point that Solomon's making here is this life, with all of the material goods that one could have, is no better than if you were a stillborn child, right? That's what he goes on to say. Because do not all go to the one place. Seems like it would be better just to never have lived than to be somebody who's acquired all this wealth, only to find that it leaves him empty. There's a great book. Let me see. I don't quite remember the. I'll read the quote. I don't remember the actual name of the book, but it's by social psychologist David Myers. Within affluent countries, where nearly everyone can afford life's necessities, increasing affluence matters surprisingly little. In the United States, the correlation between income and happiness is surprisingly weak, indeed virtually negligible. More money provides diminishing returns. The second piece of pie or the second 50,000 never tastes as good as the first. So far as happiness is concerned, it hardly matters whether one drives a BMW or walks, as David Lycan puts it based on his studies of happiness. People who go to work in their overalls are just as happy on the average as those in suits. This is from The American Paradox by David G. Myers by Yale Press. It turns out all of the improvements from the 21st century and all that the Enlightenment has brought upon us cannot improve upon Solomon's research. The world is just as it always was. The wealthy, those made most comfortable, those with all that man can accomplish, are no more satisfied than others. So don't be deceived by perspectives like Harris's, who would say that if you can create an increase of the right interactions between your brain and the material world, that somehow you can make a life more worth living. That's secular fantasy. And so we look at the enigma. He sums it up here, starting in verse 7. All the toil of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. This is his summary passage. In that case, what advantage has the wise man over the fool? And what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. For those who've been here from the beginning, you recognize that. That's the thesis of the book. All of life is vanity, Hebel. It's a striving after the wind. It's like trying to catch wind in the net. And so it is, this pursuit of wealth. It comes with no advantage over the others. So don't be deceived by it. Let me catch up on comments real quickly. All right. I thought there'd be some actual helpful questions, but it seems the skeptics are just regurgitating the same stuff. So, you studied under David Myers, one of his books. That's awesome. Yeah, I always loved his material. His research was really helpful. But yeah. So you guys get the point. That wealth comes with no lasting assurance. But again, that's where the seesaw comes into view. And if you'll remember the quote from Jeremiah Burroughs at the beginning, the question that I had for you was, how do you stay warm? Are you warmed externally by the constant need to acquire, by the constant need to gain material possessions? If so, it's an indication that your soul is sick. You're empty. And Burroughs' point is that we were actually made to be warmed from within, not just kind of this sort of pseudo spirituality. But the point is, a true contentment doesn't come from the work of your hands. It comes from knowing your Creator, and that's the point that Solomon's going to make right here in the center fold. Right? We looked at his different criticisms of those who think that wealth and comfort is going to make man happy. Well, it's going to leave him empty. So what satisfies human beings? Behold, what I've seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink, find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him, for that is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them, and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. What's the point? The point is, you were made to enjoy life, to eat, to drink, to work. Those aren't bad things. But the difference between the person who loves the work of his hands and material possessions and the one who's content is the one who is truly content sees through them as the gift of God. And that's the point right here in verse 20. He will not much remember the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. What's the point? The point is not that dementia is a good thing. The point is, you ever think about those moments where you're truly present and you can forget all the concerns of tomorrow, all the mistakes of the past, but you're so present in the moment because your joy is full? The point that he's making is that's what you were made for, but it doesn't come from stuff. Instead, it comes from God. The person who knows his Creator, who receives life as a gift from God, will not much remember the days of his life. That is the sort of remembering plagued by fear, plagued by worry, anxiety, looking back, anxious about what's coming. The person truly content will not much remember the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. Again, it's a call back to your Creator. This is Jeremiah 2. What's wrong with humanity? It's not riches. It's not poverty. It's that his heart is set on those things, right? Jeremiah 2. Be appalled, O heavens, at this. Be shocked, be utterly desolate, declares the Lord. For my people have committed two evils. What have they done? They've forsaken their Creator. the fountain of living waters. Right? They've given up that which satisfies, and they've hewed up cisterns for themselves, cisterns that hold no water. That's a metaphor for the things that you build your life upon. Water's obviously pivotal for human life. So the picture is God is central. He is the living waters. And what we have done is we have instead given ourselves to broken cisterns, right? Things with cracks, big tanks underground with cracks in them, and there's no water in them. And so we're chasing one thing after another, as Lewis says, drink and sex and ambition, because we're like children playing in a mud slum and we don't know what's being offered to us by a holiday at sea. And so what the preacher's getting at is true contentment is not in wealth, and I would say also not in poverty. True contentment is receiving life as a gift from God. The goal is to be so caught up in one's Creator, kept occupied with joy in your heart, such that you're not living your days anxious, not living your days worried, not living your days in envy, because you trust the one who's made you and all that he's given you. Yeah, Ronna, that's a great connection. I think John so much uses that language, living waters. Jesus tells his disciples, right? I've told you these things so that my joy might be in you, and your joy would be full. And that's really the fulfillment of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is the king of Israel giving his wisdom to his people. However, we know that Solomon, like the rest of Israel and like the rest of you and I, are sinners, and we have not done this. And so the goodness, the way to the Lord, is found in Christ, who has come and revealed God to us in a way that our joy would be full, that we might return to him. Everything's too sugary, Red Bulls. You guys are on to something else now. All right, I think that's all I've got tonight. But I'd encourage y'all, really, this is guarding you against, you think of the 10 Commandments, right? Not coveting. Think of Deuteronomy chapter 8, when the Lord tells Israel, when you go into the land, and that they're going to be tempted to think that their hands had given them the power to get rich, and they're going to forget that it was actually the Lord who gave them that power. It's in the same way. I think that's what Solomon is calling us to recognize that all things come from our Creator, and life is meant to be a gift from Him, not a competition, not an attempt to build an Eden apart from Him, but rather to be occupied with joy in Him. Nathan, what question do you have that's different from the ones you were asking? I understand you have a perspective of secularism that, or in your case, you were arguing for atheism, and I responded pretty thoroughly to you like 30 minutes ago. But I hope you understand, I can't give myself to one commenter for my entire time. Yeah, it's a great quote, Brian. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, right on. Again, I really do appreciate the questions, but anybody, especially guys who are who disagree with me, if you're just going to spam the chat, I can't sit here and give my whole time to answering you. There's more people here than just you. So no, he gave a parable of God's pursuit of one in the covenant community who wandered. You're yanking that right out of its context. All right. Well, appreciate you guys. We will work next week through chapter 7, where really the book begins to pivot. If you'll notice, if you look at the formatting, you'll even see the translators are indicating to you that this is a form of Hebrew poetry, right? That's what all this indentation is. It looks like a song, right? Like we would see in the book of Psalms. It's similar to what you see in Ecclesiastes chapter 1. No, I just don't, Gorfage, you just don't get to try to manipulate us that way by using scripture out of context. You're not trying to be too inviting. You're trying to twist my arm by misusing scripture. I certainly gave those commenters plenty of time. I answered several of their questions, but you don't get to try to control a Christian by misusing the scriptures. No, Nathan, I wasn't trying to misread you. It's just there were several people in here commenting objections, and there are only so many I can answer at the same time. And I think last week when I ended this, I told you I wasn't going to do it so that it cut off suddenly, and then I did it the wrong way again. So when I end this tonight, I'm going to do my best. I don't know which one I think I'm supposed to hit stop streaming, and then I'll hit end broadcast. That way everything I say gets recorded so that you see the whole thing. But a couple times now I've hit end broadcast, I think, and it cuts off immediately. I'm still learning, but thanks, guys. We'll work through chapter 7 next week. Again, you'll see it's Hebrew poetry there. And similar to chapter 1, it starts with a song, but this time it's going to be commending wisdom to us. We've done a lot of deconstructing. Now he's offering, you're seeing that other side, that alternative come up more and more. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a great night. We will see you next Tuesday.